Thank you very much, General. Rising to the ranks of the U.S. military requires skillful leadership, strength of character, and hard-won merit, and dedication to the Constitution of the United States. You know, I've had the privilege, like General Eaton, to command soldiers, and I know the trust and respect must be earned. And the ladies and gentlemen that are being held in limbo here have earned that trust and demonstrated the skill, professionalism, and dedication to country that is requisite to lead American fighting men and women. But we know now Republicans, led by Senator Tuberville, are sabotaging the promotions for most senior officers. They are injecting partisanship and politics into what should be clearly a meritorious decision. All of these men and women have earned their promotions. They didn't run an election, they didn't politic for it, they earned it. Now, I'm chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee. I've got great support by Senator Kaine and Senator Warren, Senator Klobuchar, but we have to reverse this unnecessary holes. 7 months ago, Senator Tuberville decided that he would question the policy of the Department of Defense by holding hundreds of military personnel. He's upset because the Department of Defense went through an analysis and concluded a policy with respect to access to reproductive rights. This policy is legal. And frankly, the best rationale for why it's legal, it has not been challenged by anyone. Now, if it was illegal, as Tuberville says on and on and on, don't come here, go to court. He's not going to do it because it's legal. This is just a political decision that he is making that is hurting the nation, hurting our men and women in uniform, and particularly hurting their families. These promotions were designed to take place in a period, usually in the summertime, so children can change schools, so housing can be arranged, and that has all been thrown out the window. Day to day, soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marine guardians don't know where they're going to be. And oh, by the way, in terms of our organization and our security, we're in a situation where we have individuals that have one job that takes 24/7 doing two jobs. Now, who is benefiting from that? Not the United States, but I'll tell you, it's our adversaries all across the globe. We have a general officer that's helping direct our Ukraine operations. He does not have a deputy. That job is not 24/7. That's like 48/7. It's amazing. So we need to get forward. You can't continue this. And we're asking our Republican colleagues, because they're the ones who have to stand up. And I must commend the House Chairman of the Armed Services Committee and several individual House Republicans who stood up and said, this can't go on, this can't go on. They're right. So we have to move forward. It's time for Senator Tuberville to remove these damaging holes. And thank you very much.
Senator Kaine.
Well, listen, there is nothing more important that any of us will do today than stand right here. Of these hundreds of military promotions that are being held up by Senator Tuberville, enabled by the entire GOP minority in the Senate, 39 are folks who have been nominated to positions in Virginia. And I'm just looking right here, Lawrence S. Linton, who is nominated to be the Deputy Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army TRADOC, the Training and Doctrine Command at Langley Eustis, is one of the 39. Many of the 39 are in Virginia now, awaiting the promotion so that they can move their families, and huge numbers of these hundreds have been in Virginia at some point during their military career. So this is something we feel very, very directly in our own state. Let's be clear about what's going on. Senator Tuberville, with the support of his Republican colleagues, are punishing these people because he's unpersuasive. What do I mean by this? Senator Tuberville has the right not to like a policy of the Pentagon. And there's a venue for resolving that. He's on the Armed Services Committee. He doesn't like a current Pentagon policy. And so he offered an amendment to change it when we were debating the National Defense Authorization Act. He couldn't convince his colleagues. He failed. I've offered amendments in the committee, you have, and we're not always successful. But when we aren't persuasive enough to convince our colleagues, we don't just decide to punish all these military officers who've had nothing to do with the policy that we're unhappy about. Instead, we try to get more persuasive. We offered Senator Tuberville the opportunity, okay, you failed in committee, you couldn't persuade your colleagues, we'll give you a floor vote on the defense bill. He didn't even ask for a floor vote. Doesn't this suggest something? Does this really matter to him as a matter of principle? If it really mattered to him, he would have asked for a floor vote in the Senate. But he didn't. Why not? Because he knew he would lose, and he would lose worse than in committee. And so he's taking out his inability to persuade his colleagues on these hundreds of people who have volunteered to wear the nation of the uniform and risk their life in doing so. I want to finish just by knocking down a pernicious offer that has been on the table from some in the Republican minority in the Senate. They said, well, why don't you just call up a few of the brass and have votes on them and just punish everybody else? Well, why don't we just vote on the service chiefs and the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and let Tuberville punish everybody down the rank? That's not the way the military works, folks. We all remember this wonderful colleague of ours who was chairman of the Armed Services Committee, John McCain. A few years ago, Senator McConnell and Senator Reid called a lunch for all 100 of us and asked John to share with us his experiences in Vietnam. And he talked about being shot down and being a prisoner of war for years in the Hanoi Hilton with a number of people who had been POWs longer than he had been. He was tortured. He was at the end of his tether. And at some point along the way, the North Vietnamese found out that his dad was a VIP. And so they came to him and said, hey, we'll let you go. We'll give you your freedom. Imagine if you had been imprisoned and tortured and you had that offer, how you would feel. It must have been incredibly tempting to say yes. But John McCain knew what the military ethic was. And what he said is, no, you're going to let out everybody who was imprisoned before me, and when you've done that, then come back to me and talk. And he turned down the offer of freedom. And I'll never forget what he said as he looked at us that day and described his experiences. When I turned down that offer of freedom, then things got very bad for me. Then things got very bad for me. Don't tell people in the military, and don't tell those of us who care about it, that we should take care of a few of the brass and punish everybody else. That is not a serious offer. It's directly contrary to the military ethic, and it's directly contrary to what we should do as senators. The GOP should prevail upon Senator Tuberville. Quit punishing those who are serving this country. I'm now very happy to introduce the senator from Massachusetts, who is the chair of the very important Senate Personnel Subcommittee overseeing these most important promotions, Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Senator Kaine, and obviously Senator Reid and Senator Klobuchar and all of our colleagues who have stood up. Oh, and there we go. And Senator Duckworth, you sneaked in there. I also want to say a very special thank you to Vote Vets for getting us here today and giving us a chance once more to say in public, we've got a problem, and that problem's name is Senator Tuberville. For 7 months, Senator Tuberville has held senior military nominations hostage. We are missing our top officers for the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps. We are missing Navy commanders in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. We're missing the head of cybersecurity. These holes are causing lasting and preventable damage to our national security. The Navy estimates that it may take as long as 6 or 7 years to recover from the damage inflicted by Senator Tuberville. These military leaders and their families have served their country honorably for years, and Senator Tuberville is treating them like dirt. America's closest allies are shocked by how we have allowed this to go on for so long. I recently met with NATO leaders to see firsthand the impact of these holds, and the situation is grim. They can already feel U.S. influence waning. Our allies question our commitment to the alliance if we can't get done something as simple as promoting our leaders and getting them to their next duty stations. Our enemies are watching. As Defense Secretary Austin has pointed out, the longer these holds continue, quote, the greater the risk the U.S. military runs in every theater, every domain, and every service. It is hard to imagine a bigger propaganda win for our enemies. This is particularly terrible and unfair to military families who never asked to be a political football. They've given up jobs and missed school enrollment deadlines. They're paying extra money to maintain 2 households or to store their belongings until they can move to their next home. These families agree to make a lot of sacrifices, including constant moves, but they never signed up for this. These holds have gone on for far too long. I urge my Republican colleagues to put national security before special interests and confirm these military leaders today. And with that, I introduce someone who has been right at the center of this fight, Senator Klobuchar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sergeant. Thank you. Thank you to Vote Vets. Thank you to my incredible colleagues. I'm honored to be here with so many leaders on the Armed Services Committee. I literally cannot believe that Tommy Tuberville is still doing this. I hope that he comes out of that building and sees these 300 signs that are in front of us right now, because every single picture, every single name, every single title represents someone who has decided to put their life on the line for our country. They've put our country in front of their families, in front of their hometowns, and they're now signs on the lawn saying to us, and I hope he looks at them, we've got families, we've got kids, there were schools they were supposed to start in, and they are all waiting because of one man. And as my colleagues have pointed out, as Senator Reid pointed out, Tommy Tuberville was offered a vote on this policy. He could have had his moment. He wouldn't have won it. I think he knows that, and we know that. But he could have had a vote on the very policy that he is contesting. Instead, he perseveres. Look at this, 319 positions. If we were to vote on them, as I guess he wants, each one individually, it would take 103 days. The government would stop. We wouldn't be able to work on the budget, nothing else. By the end of the year, it's projected that he will be holding up double this number, double the number of signs, double the number of families, 650, which would take over 200 days of normal work days. This reckless blockade is hurting our military readiness, it's hurting the morale of our troops, and it's hurting the members of the military who put their own lives on the line for us. And if that is not enough, you look at the security risks that it creates, as Senator Warren and as Senator Kaine and Reid have just pointed out. What's he doing? He's holding up the Commandant of the U.S. Marines. Never happened in 100 years. I always thought you don't mess with the Marines. At least that's what Jack Reed told me. You don't mess with the Marines. But this guy, he's going to see what happens when he does that. Not without a Commandant, single senator's grievance over a policy on which he can have a vote on the floor of the U.S. Senate. He is holding up the commander of Cybercom at a time when cyber has become a weapon of war, and our nation, of course, needs to stay a step ahead. China is watching this right now. China that's engaged in cyber war. China that is making sure that it keeps improving its capabilities when it comes to cyber, and he is holding up the head of Cybercom. He is holding up the head of the Pacific Air Command at the time when we're seeing not just China saber rattling, but when we're seeing Vladimir Putin welcome Kim Jong-un to a meeting. Pacific Air Command. That's what he's holding up. This is not the time to let these essential roles in our military sit. Our service members and the civilians who serve our military must be able to look at their leaders for guidance and stability. Many of these, in fact, all of these great leaders had some bipartisan support to get where they are. Previous presidents have been able to put people in place. This has been done by unanimous consent, yet we are seeing one senator hold up the entire chain of command. Every day this blockade continues. It hurts our military and it helps our enemies. We plead with our Republican colleagues, some of whom are now speaking out. We plead with them to stop him, to get him to lift his holds, and to move forward with this so we can move forward with the great patriotic nation that we are. And with that, talking about patriots, I get to introduce my incredible colleague, Tammy Duckworth, someone who put her own life on the line, lost 2 legs in Iraq in a helicopter crash, has been the most spoken advocate from the very beginning against Tommy Tuberville for what he is doing. And I don't know, if you don't mess with Marines, you also don't mess with Tammy Duckworth.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar, for that wonderful introduction. You know, this is about our national security, something that Senator Tuberville says he would not jeopardize, where he said that he would immediately lift this hold if he thought that it jeopardized our national security. Well, let me tell you, every member of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has said our national security is jeopardized. Every single Department of Defense official, secretaries of defense, Army, Navy, Air Force have all said the same thing. This is jeopardizing our national security. When Senator Warren talked about going to the NATO meeting, our United States military officer who was in charge of representing us at NATO could not go because she had not been confirmed, because she is among the names that are on this lawn today. So we did not have a U.S. military rep present who had the full backing of the United States Congress, who had been confirmed by the Senate in order to be there. This is happening all over the globe today. And Tommy Tuberville continues to blockade all of these promotions. And it makes absolutely no sense, because the argument that he's making, he's already been given an opportunity to fix the issues that he is concerned with. He's been offered a floor in committee, a vote in committee. He's been offered a vote on the floor. He has been offered many off-ramps, not just by Democrats, but by Republicans. And this is where I call on my Republican colleagues and let them know that they are complicit in this as well. As long as they allow him to move forward with this, we are going to continue to jeopardize our national security. This is not just on Tommy Tuberville. This is on the Republicans as well, because they are letting him do this. They're not pushing pressure on him to stop these holds. And by the way, if you want to know why Tommy Tuberville is doing this, it's not for the interests of our nation. It is not for the interests of our military men and women. In fact, the policy that he opposes is one that is most important to the lowest ranking members of our military. It is our lowest ranking people in the military who have to go to their commanders and ask permission for a pass to leave post to go get the health care that they need. They are the ones who are most vulnerable. They're the ones who are least able to afford to get the care that they need, whatever that care is. And so he is not just punishing the leadership, he is punishing the lowest ranking, the youngest, most vulnerable members of our military and their family members as well. And the other thing that he's doing is he is fundraising off of this. He has sent out many fundraising requests. He is proud of what he's doing. He is proud of putting America's national security on the line so that he can fundraise on the backs of these men and women, on the backs of their families, on the backs of every one of our men and women in uniform who put on the uniform of this great nation, who stand to defend her, ready to defend her, and yet there's a United States Senator, a single person, fundraising off of them. I ask you, why is Tommy Tuberville doing this? He is not doing this for the good of the nation. A man who has never worn the uniform of this great nation, who could have, at any time, joined the military, did not. Now he is holding it hostage for his own personal political gain. It is not acceptable. I call on Tommy Tuberville to drop this hold. I call on my Republican colleagues to step up. Stop talking behind the scenes. Stop talking and saying, hey, you know what? I don't agree with this behind the scenes. Come forward and make him stop, because that is where we can make the difference, is that our Republicans can step forward. Because if they do not do this, this is on them as well. Our nation deserves better than this. Our military men and women deserve better than this. Their families deserve better than this. And by the way, all Americans deserve better than this because our national security is on the line. Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you, Tammy. Tammy, thank you. I got it. Okay. There we go. Tammy, thank you for your service and for those words. I don't think there's much more that I can add, but I want to thank Vote Vets and all of the partners for making clear to us the stark reality of how badly our national security is compromised. It is absolutely stunning, the impact that this is having as we speak on the readiness of our military. I think a lot about submariners. I represent a sub base in southeast Connecticut. Every job in the United States military and every branch is a difficult job, but that lifestyle is unique. We have families down in southeast Connecticut who move to that beautiful section of our state and then don't see their loved one for 6 months to a year, barely hear from them as they go out traveling the world in an attack submarine or a boomer protecting this nation. It isn't easy to convince a young man or a young woman to lead that lifestyle, to sign up to protect this nation and to disappear from your family year after year as you go out on submarine deployment. The reason they do it is because they believe that the people running this country put their interests and their safety first, make it the highest priority of the nation. And what Senator Tuberville and Republicans are communicating is that their safety, their well-being, is just a political game chip to be used to try to fulfill the most important Republican objective, which is criminalizing women's health care. Nothing matters more to this Republican Party than criminalizing women's health care, and they are willing to sacrifice anything in order to get that done, including the well-being of our troops and our soldiers. The practical impact of this is real. Recruitment suffers. As you watch Tommy Tuberville and Senate Republicans playing politics with your livelihood, you think to yourself, should I stay? Or are they going to play games with my promotion a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now? Because let me guarantee you, the brave, capable members of our military, especially those that are moving up through the ranks, they are getting offers from the private sector that they turn down because they believe that if they stay, the priority will be protecting the country. But when Tommy Tuberville makes it clear that the priority is criminalizing women's health care, not the safety of our military, not the effectiveness of our national security, it has an impact on our ability to recruit and retain. And the second practical impact it has is that we are stretching thin our leadership. Admiral Lisa Franchetti made news the other day when she testified about how long it would take for the military to recover, even if tomorrow we went forward with these promotions. But she also noted that she is right now doing two jobs. She is both the Vice Chief of Naval Operations and the Acting Chief of the Service. And she is not alone. Senior members of the military now having to do two jobs, the one that they are about to have and the one that they still have. If you don't think that that has a present impact on readiness, you don't understand how difficult it is to do one job in the senior ranks of our military, never mind two. So I'm really glad to be here with my colleagues. Senator Tuberville walks around here with a big smile on his face. And he wouldn't do that if he was getting real pressure from his Republican colleagues. He wouldn't do that if his Republican colleagues were making it clear to him that there was a price to pay for him and his future in the Republican conference by taking this drastic stand. And so, while we will continue to raise this issue in any forum possible, we also need our Republican colleagues to, do more than politely whisper to Senator Tuberville, do more than say polite things to the press. They need to start pressing him to put the security of this nation first.
We'll put it back in there.